When you try to become nobody, life kindly hands you a stack of bills with your name on them and asks, "So, who's paying?" We spend years constructing a very sophisticated somebody, only to discover that the one who is exhausted by that somebody has been quietly watching from the beginning. There comes a moment when your suffering stops being about fixing the world out there and starts being about the identity that's clinging in here. The strange grace of the path is realizing that your neurosis, your shame, your cravings, even your overdue rent can all become doorways to the sacred if you stop disowning them. At some point, you meet a presence, maybe a guru, maybe a stranger on the bus, maybe your own breath, that loves you so completely you start to suspect you are not who you thought you were. You learn the art of being the witness, of watching your drama about money, success, failure, and obligation rise and fall like waves, while something vast in you remains very, very still. In the marketplace, at the protest, in the office meeting where everyone's trying to be right, you discover you can serve without an enemy and work without being worked by your own righteousness. As the roles keep shifting, parent, activist, seeker, employee, patient, caretaker, you begin to taste a quiet, anonymous love that plays them all without believing it is any of them. Then one day, in traffic or in line at the bank, you see that everybody around you is also wearing a fragile costume of somebody, and your heart breaks open with a compassion that has no center. And finally, you find you can pay your bills, answer your emails, hold your grief, and still dissolve into the simple, luminous fact of being. Nobody and everybody, empty and overflowing all at once. So let's just sit here together for a moment, the way two old friends might sit on a porch in the late afternoon, not rushing to explain anything, just feeling this strange, tender business of being alive. You know this dance you're in. On Monday morning, you are a very serious somebody. You are a name on a paycheck, a number on a tax form, a resume, a list of responsibilities, rent, electric, groceries, insurance. The world says you are this bundle of obligations, and you nod because in a way it's true. The landlord does not accept pure awareness as a form of payment. And yet some nights, when the house is quiet and there's just that hum of the refrigerator and the distant traffic, something in you leans back from all of that. For just a second, you are not your to-do list. You are not the hero or the failure of your own story. You are simply here, breathing, aware, undefined. That gap, that tiny pause where you are nobody in particular, is the doorway. The problem, of course, is that the moment we glimpse that doorway, the somebody grabs it. The ego says, becoming nobody. Excellent. That will look wonderful on my spiritual resume. Then nobody becomes the new costume. You know how that goes. I used to be worldly, but now I'm spiritual. I used to be attached to money, but now I'm attached to not being attached to money. It's charming, really. Like watching a child dress up in their parents' clothes and declare themselves the president. You don't get angry at the child, you just smile. We build these elaborate somebodies, the good worker, the good parent, the good activist, the good meditator, and each one secretly whispers, "Please tell me I'm enough. Please tell me I'm safe." But the soul is very patient. It doesn't argue with the personality. It just keeps quietly whispering, "My love, you were never this mask." There was once a man who thought he knew who he was. He had diplomas on the wall, a respectable job, a well-earned identity as a very important mind. Inside, though, he was frightened, hungry for love, and deeply busy keeping up his somebody. One day he met a being in India, wrapped in a simple blanket, who looked at him as if he were made only of love. Just imagine that for yourself for a moment. Someone looks into your eyes and sees past your failures, past your achievements, past your secrets, right into the place in you that is untouched and innocent, and they love that. To be seen like that is terrifying and relieving all at once. Terrifying because all your costumes lie in a pile on the floor. Relieving because you realize you were always more than the costumes. The guru, the true teacher, whether it appears as a human being or a tree or your child or your own breath, has one basic job: to mirror back to you the truth of what you are under all the noise. The joke is, you come looking for spiritual teachings to become a better somebody. You want to be calmer, wiser, more loving, more successful at being spiritual. And the guru just smiles and keeps quietly stealing your masks. At first you resist. Wait, you say, if I stop being this somebody, who will handle my life? Who will manage my relationships? Who will pay the bills? It's a fair question, so let's look at that. I'll wake up in the morning and the mind starts up like an old engine. I have to get to work. I have to make enough money. What if I don't? What if I lose what I have? What if I never reach whatever that thing is I'm supposed to reach? Notice the I in all of those sentences. I. It's like a little drum beat. Now, if you close your eyes for a moment and just listen, not to the words, but to the space they arise in, you might notice something curious. The thoughts appear and disappear, but there is an awareness that hears them. The worry about money, the pride when you succeed, the shame when you fail, all of that is content. But the one who knows it, the silent knower, is constant. This awareness is not worried about paying the electricity, and it's not that it's irresponsible. It's that it is before responsibility, before success and failure, before the story. When you begin to identify, not just intellectually, but viscerally, with that awareness, something softens around the whole drama of your life. You still do the things, you still file the taxes, show up at meetings, take your kids to school, wash the dishes. But the tightness of me doing my life begins to loosen. It's as if you were an actor in a play who suddenly remembers they are an actor. The lines are still spoken, the scene's still performed, but a part of you is resting in the audience, watching with a kind of affectionate, amused curiosity. Now the ego hears this and it gets nervous. It says, if I don't run everything, everything will fall apart. If I loosen my grip, I'll become passive, lazy, irresponsible. I'll just sit in a lotus position while the bills pile up and the roof leaks. But that fear comes from a misunderstanding. Becoming nobody doesn't mean becoming inert. It means the identity that claims ownership of every action relaxes. The doing still happens. The life still happens. You just stop being the doer. There was a moment once, standing at the edge of a crowd near a nuclear facility, people chanting, banners waving, voices raised in outrage and in love, that this paradox became very clear. On one side of the fence, concrete, barbed wire, the machinery of destruction. On the other, people praying, singing, opposing that destruction. If I was only my righteous anger, the people inside the fence were the enemy, the bad guys. My heart closed just enough to make them an object. But if I listened deeper, beneath the chanting, beneath the speeches, there was another current, a sorrow for all the ways we've forgotten each other, for how frightened we must be to build machines designed to end life on such a scale. Standing there, I noticed that if I relaxed into awareness, simply witnessing the whole scene, the drama rearranged itself. On one level, there were clearly actions to be taken, letters to write, meetings to attend, protests to organize, laws to challenge. On another level, there were no enemies. There were frightened, conditioned beings everywhere, doing the best they knew how from inside their particular illusions. To act from that place is to practice a kind of invisible yoga. You step forward, you speak, you organize. But watch very carefully inside. Is my heart open? Am I creating an us and a them? Am I feeding on my own righteousness like a secret candy? The world desperately needs our hands, our skills, our intelligence, our willingness to say no to the machinery of suffering. But if we bring hatred into that work, we simply add another layer of confusion. So we learn this strange art, acting without an enemy. That doesn't mean being passive or polite. It means remembering, even as you stand at the microphone or sign the petition, that the one you oppose is, at the deepest level, not other than you. Now, all of this sounds lofty until the credit card statement arrives. Then the spiritual poetry tends to evaporate. There you are, looking at the numbers, feeling the tightening in the chest, the heat in the face. The familiar story. I'll never get ahead. I'm such a mess. I should have done better. Other people have it figured out. This is where the practice really is. You don't float above your finances in some mystical fog. You bring the candle of awareness right into the messy room. You sit with the fear. You taste it, feel where it sits in the body. You notice the voices that come with it, the old parental scoldings, the comparisons, the catastrophizing. And instead of treating these as enemies, you bow to them gently. Ah, you say inwardly, here is fear, here is shame, here is scarcity. These too are part of my humanity. You are learning to be the witness. Not a cold, distant witness that disowns the experience, but a warm, curious witness. Like a grandmother sitting on the porch watching the children play and fight and cry and laugh. She doesn't run down to the yard every time there's a squabble. She trusts the process. She's available, but she's not entangled. When you watch your own mind like that, something begins to shift. The urgency, the panic, the I am this fear, this failure starts to lose its grip. The fear still comes, but you are not swallowed by it. In that space, out of that stillness, you might find you can take the next practical step with much more clarity. Make a phone call, ask for help, create a budget, say no to an old pattern. The action arises from a quieter place, not from a desperate attempt to patch up a broken identity. You see, the world teaches us to reverse the order. It says, fix your life first, then you can rest. The inner work says, rest in what you truly are, and from that rest, let the life be tended. Both levels are real. On the relative level, you get a job, you quit a job, you move, you stay, you argue, you reconcile. On the absolute level, you are this spacious, silent awareness in which all of that is arising and dissolving. One of the great confusions on the path is that we try to get rid of the relative in order to live in the absolute. We say, if only I had no responsibilities, I could be awake. If only I didn't have children or aging parents or debts, then I could meditate deeply, I could serve purely, I could be free. But what if the very texture of your life, this life with its obligations, heartbreaks, and appointments, is the exact curriculum your soul signed up for? Imagine that before you were born, your soul sat down with a celestial admissions counselor and said, I'd like a course in compassion, please, a deep one, and also a course in surrender, perhaps one in trusting the unknown. And the counselor smiled and said, all right, we'll arrange a family that doesn't always understand you, a culture obsessed with achievement, a nervous system wired for worry, and a bank account that requires your attention. That should do nicely. From the soul's perspective, each bill, each argument, each lost opportunity is part of the syllabus, not as punishment, but as a chance to remember. Remember what? That you are not the character in the story. You are the light in which the story appears. Now, this light is not something you have to manufacture. It's what's looking through your eyes right now. It's what hears these words. It's what notices your thoughts about these words. The journey from ego to soul, from being a tight little somebody to relaxing into being nobody in particular, is really the journey from identifying with the contents of awareness to identifying with awareness itself. How do we make that journey? We start very simply with presence. You're washing the dishes. Instead of racing ahead to the next thing, you feel the temperature of the water, the weight of the plate, the sound of the bubbles. For just a moment, you are not a success or a failure, not behind or ahead. You're just here, hands in soapy water, breathing. You're standing in line at the post office. Instead of complaining internally, you notice the posture of the person in front of you, the way their shoulders slump under invisible burdens. You realize they too have bills, regrets, longings. Something in you silently bows. May you be at ease. This is where compassion sneaks in. not as a grand gesture, but as a quiet shifting of how you see. You start to glimpse that everyone is doing this strange dance of being a somebody on the outside and feeling like a confused, tender nobody on the inside. The more you rest as awareness, the less trapped you are in your own storyline, and the more spacious you become toward others. Their behavior might still be difficult. They might still cut you off in traffic, say thoughtless things, vote differently than you do. But instead of immediately making them the villain of your movie, you pause. You wonder, what pain are they carrying that I can't see? What fear is driving them? This is not about excusing harm. It's about seeing through the costume. The guru, in whatever form it appears for you, helps you with this seeing. Maybe it's a human teacher whose presence melts your defenses. Maybe it's an animal who loves you without conditions. Maybe it's a sacred text that suddenly feels like it was written just for you. Maybe it's an unexpected moment in nature, a bird landing on a fence, sunlight on a cracked sidewalk, a night sky that makes your problems feel teeny and vast at the same time. The guru is a function, not a person. It's the function of awakening you to what you already are. And the funny thing is, once that function has done its job, you realize that the guru was never separate from you. It was your own deepest truth playing out in a form you could recognize. There's a kind of cosmic humor in all of this. You run around the world seeking enlightenment, signing up for workshops, reading books, hoping some expert will hand you the secret key. And finally, in a moment of grace, maybe doing something as ordinary as sipping tea, you realize you've been sitting in the treasure room the whole time. It's like searching for your glasses while they're on your nose. So you laugh and you cry. Because all the years of struggle weren't wrong. They were part of what softened you enough to see. Now, as this recognition deepens, the question of how do I live shifts. It's no longer just how do I succeed, how do I protect myself. It becomes how do I serve. Service is what naturally flows when the sense of being a separate, isolated somebody begins to thin. If I am separate from you, then helping you is a moral choice, a duty, maybe even a burden. But if in some quiet corner of my being I have tasted that you and I are expressions of the same mystery, then serving you is like scratching an itch on my own arm. Karma yoga, action without the sticky fingers of the actor grabbing at the results. You still show up at your job, care for your family, participate in your community, but internally you offer the fruits up. You don't pretend you're above wanting things to go well. That would just be more spiritual pretense. You simply keep noticing when you're clinging to outcomes, when your sense of worth is riding on success, and you lovingly, repeatedly let that go. Here, you say inwardly, I offer this email, this meeting, this conversation, this paycheck, this day. You might imagine placing it in the hands of the beloved, whatever that means for you, God, the mystery, the one, the great flowing. Then you act as skillfully as you know how, and the rest is not your business. Of course, the ego doesn't retire gracefully. It keeps auditioning. It says, look at me being such a devoted servant. Isn't my humility impressive? You'll catch it polishing its badges, best meditator, most compassionate activist, least attached spiritual seeker. When you see that, you don't have to beat yourself up. You just smile. You recognize an old friend. Ah, there's my little somebody trying to sneak in the back door. The moment you see it, you're already back in awareness. The ego has been seen, and what you are is the seeing, not the seen. Gradually, your life becomes less about improving your costume and more about relaxing into the one who's wearing it. And yet the costume remains. You are still a citizen, a neighbor, a sibling, a worker, a body that gets tired and hungry and sick. Becoming nobody doesn't mean floating off into some abstract void. It means inhabiting your humanity more fully, but lightly, kindly, with room to breathe. There may be pain, bodies hurt, hearts break, plans fall apart, people leave. Being awake doesn't immunize you against any of that. Sometimes, in fact, it makes you more sensitive, but the pain lands in a larger field. It's like a wave arising in an infinite ocean. If you think you are the wave, each rise and crash is life or death. If you know yourself as the ocean, the wave is still real. It's just not the whole story. In that sense, waking up is not a way out of the human mess. It's a way into it, but without drowning. You can sit with a friend who is grieving and not rush to fix it. You can let their tears stir your own without collapsing into despair. You can feel the ache of injustice in the world and let it move your feet and your voice without turning your heart into stone. You can open the envelope with the bill inside and feel the old knot in your stomach, and instead of being ashamed of it, you can put a hand on your belly and say, "Yes, of course you're scared. I'm here with you." This is what it is to become nobody while still paying your bills. Nobody, in this sense, is not a vacancy. It is a fullness so vast that it doesn't need a label. It doesn't start when you're born or end when your body dies. It is this great silent presence in which galaxies spin and a single ant carries a crumb across the sidewalk. And somehow, that same presence is also the one that remembers to set the alarm clock so you're not late for work. The mind cannot comprehend this paradox because the mind likes neat categories, spiritual over here, mundane over there, sacred in the temple, profane at the supermarket. But life isn't divided that way. The temple is in the supermarket. The divine play is in the traffic jam. The altar is the kitchen sink. If you are willing, even for a breath or two at a time, to meet your life as it is, with its emails and aches and disappointments, as the unfolding of the sacred, then the distinction between being someone and being no one begins to blur. You start to feel like a transparent person. People see a face, a name, a role, but inside you know yourself as space. Loving, aware space. From that space, you can walk into a meeting or a hospital room or a protest or a family dinner, and your very presence says, without words, it's okay to be exactly as you are. This is the greatest gift. Not fixing people, not improving them, but seeing them so utterly that they remember, even for a second, that they are more than their story. We learn this first by receiving it from a teacher, a friend, a stranger who shows up at just the right moment. And then, bit by bit, we become it for others. Not because we are trying to be holy, but because we can't quite believe anymore in the lie that we are separate. So here we are, you and I, in this peculiar moment of history, with our glowing screens, our overflowing schedules, our collective anxiety about the future. You might look around and think, this is a terrible time to wake up. Everything is too loud, too fast, too unstable. But perhaps it is the perfect time. The very intensity of our era, the speed, the crises, the interconnectedness, makes the illusions harder to sustain. You can see in real time how deeply we affect one another. A sneeze on one side of the world becomes a wave of illness everywhere. A careless word online travels the globe. A single act of kindness ripples outward in ways you may never see. In such a world, the practice of becoming nobody is not self-indulgence, it is medicine. Each time you remember that you are more than your story, you become a little less reactive. Each time you choose presence over autopilot, compassion over judgment, you slightly shift the field in which we all live. It may seem small, it is not. The bills will still arrive, the car will still need repairs, the body will still age. This is the nature of form. But in the midst of all that, you can live as a quiet blessing, as a space of stillness in a spinning world, as a soft eye in the storm. This doesn't require perfection. It asks only for sincerity. So when you forget, when you find yourself snarling at the person ahead of you in line, or obsessing over money, or comparing yourself to others, Don't turn that forgetfulness into another reason to condemn yourself. That's just the ego painting itself black instead of gold. Instead, use the forgetting as a bell. Oh, you say, I was lost just now. How human of me. Let me come back. Back to what? To this breath, to this sensation of the body sitting or standing, to the simple awareness of sounds and space, to the quiet behind the thoughts. You don't have to force anything, just notice, just allow. Over and over, gently, you relax your grip. You let the somebody soften into the vastness of nobody in particular. And in that vastness, mysteriously, love begins to flow more freely. Not sentimental love, not I love you because you make me feel safe, but a deeper current that says, I am you. When that love begins to move through your life, even the small acts take on a different flavor. Answering a phone call, signing a check, washing a floor, listening to a friend, all become opportunities to embody that invisible truth. There is only one of us here, wearing many faces. You won't always feel it. Some days you will feel very small and very frightened and very stuck in your particular face. That too is part of it. On those days, perhaps you can remember just one thing, that you are held by life itself, by the same mystery that turns seeds into trees and thoughts into poems and strangers into friends. You don't have to understand it. You don't have to deserve it. You don't have to earn it. You can simply lean a little into the possibility that you are not alone, even when you feel most separate. And in that leaning, there may be a tiny loosening, a little more space around the fear, a shy willingness to be here as you are in this moment. From that small opening, the path continues, not in a straight line, not as a ladder to climb, but as a spiral. You circle back to the same lessons: fear, attachment, grief, longing, and each time perhaps you meet them with a bit more gentleness, a bit more humor, a bit more trust. You are becoming nobody, and in that nobody, the whole universe is shimmering. The rent is still due, the dishes still need washing, the body still needs rest. Be. But underneath it all and within it all, there is this presence, this awareness, this quiet, unnameable love. Let's rest together there just for a moment. Feel the breath move in and out. Feel the weight of the body supported by the chair or the floor. Notice the sounds around you, the play of light and shadow. Notice the thoughts still drifting like clouds. And notice, most of all, that which notices. Silent, open, unmoved, even as everything moves. You don't have to do anything with it. You don't have to hold it or keep it. It is what you are. From here, you will get up, you will return to your life, you will answer messages, plan meals, make choices. Let those actions be simple. Let them be infused with this quiet. Be nobody, lovingly wearing the mask of somebody just long enough to do what needs to be done. And when you forget, remember that you can always come home to this.